welcome to Afterthoughts. This is a recommend or refute episode. That is where we are. I got to talk about something we recently watched and let you know if we recommend it, if we refute it, if we sit on the fence about it. We'll see.
We're not going to be sitting on the fence.
No sitting on the fence, John. To get started, I am your host tonight, Ryan King. With me, our usual suspects, John Garcia.
Hey, happy to be here. I'm excited to talk about my movie. It's one that I missed in theaters and I've just been itching to see, and I finally got to see it, so I'm just jazzed to talk about it. It's going to be great.
All right.
Also joining us, Michael Dixon.
What's up? Excited to talk about what I watched this week.
Well, let's kick it off then. John, what did you have a chance to watch?
So last year, what movie did we go see, Dixon? We went and saw something. It was like a Wong Kar-wai film, I think, and they had like an advertisement right beforehand for a movie that we both looked at each other with different expressions. I think it was Chungking Express.
Yeah.
And there was a trailer that played and it was like from Vinegar Syndrome, and I was like so fucking excited.
Yeah, it was Chungking Express.
I got so excited. I was like, what the fuck? Vinegar Syndrome's doing like real theater stuff now, which since then they've invaded AFS. They have some screenings at AFS, I saw. Part of the programming and presentation. They're making their way into the lates, I'm sure, and some of the cult films there. Mm-hmm. But they showed a trailer for this movie, and it came out last year. Directed by Weston Razzouli, which is a fun name to say, called Riddle of Fire.
What the hell?
Three goblins, two ghosts, one fairy, a troll, huntsman, and a witch. The Prince of the Mountain forever grants friends to those with hearts rich.
Razzouli sounds like a Dustin Hoffman character or something, like a midnight cowboy type of guy.
Yeah, I could see that kind of being the name for sure. But Riddle of Fire, I just remember the trailer has this kind of haze, this like fairy tale sort of dreamy, dazed kind of look about it. The film itself revolves around three kids that are precocious living in a town. It's shot entirely in Utah. I don't think the film itself takes place in Utah, but it is filmed in Utah on glorious 16 millimeter Kodak film stock.
Oh,
so it has this beautiful grimy grain to it, but it also, because of that grain, it kind of blends really well with the fairy tale-esque haze that's in it. Tells the story of these three kids, Hazel and Alice and Jody, who their mom is sick, or Hazel and Jody's mom is sick and has a cold, and they're going to try to play video games, but their TV now has password protection on it. It's blocked by this graphic wall of fire. And so they have to figure out what the password is for it.
Like an actual firewall?
It's like an actual, it's a literal firewall. It's got like candles and shit in the graphic. It's really funny. So there's a lot of like visual nods of just like, that's what it is. The game console they want to play is some made up shit that also just seems really funny from a naming perspective. I think it's called like Otomo, the Otomo Angel, and the controllers look just like insane.
It's like an Atari knockoff.
Yeah, it's like this weird GameCube that's made out of like lines. It's just like so fucking dumb.
No, I think in South Park, the Okami game sphere.
Yeah, it's kind of like a nod. It's kind of a nod to that. And they're like so jazzed to play it. And then they find out that there's a firewall on their TV somehow. And their mom is like, you should be outside playing and all this stuff. And they're like, well, no, like they really barter with her. And she's like, fine, I'll give you the password if you can get this one baker in town, this small town, to make me a blueberry pie. She always made me a blueberry pie when I was sick, and it makes me feel really good about myself. And they go on this epic quest to just get a blueberry pie where baker's not there. They try to get the recipe. They want to get these ingredients. And it like kind of like boils down to each ingredient being something they need to get until it's like this one absurd ingredient, like a speckled egg from a chicken that's like been birthed this way, like kind of thing. It's fucking ridiculous.
Wait, does the baker not have any ingredients?
No, the baker's like sick and there's some other stuff going on.
So they have to make the pie themselves.
Yeah, so they're like, we're just going to fucking make the pie. And then they fall in with a cult that has actual magic powers and like,
oh my God,
all this shit. It just builds and builds. And the kids they're like non-actors. So they're not great necessarily. And one of them is subtitled for the entire movie because you can't tell what he's saying at certain times, but he just says whatever's written and it's like precocious shit. It's really funny.
He just like struggles to pronounce things.
Yeah.
Well.
He'll just say like at one point they get into an argument with each other where they're like, you're not like, everybody likes cute things and you're obviously cute. And he's like, I'm not cute. I'm hot. And it's like fucking subtitled. Yeah. And you're like, what the fuck are we talking about? It's wild. And Sasha and I started watching it. I was like, I'm already engaged in it. I was like, Sasha's always the litmus test to see if she likes this kind of stuff. But she stayed awake for the movie, was smiling for all of it because it just had this charm to it. And it even gets into kind of more thrilling territory when they fall in with the cult. The cult is like, they have their own objective. They're going up to some like national park to hunt spirits. And that means they're going to like fucking Princess Mononoke a deer, Ryan. They're trying to kill like the spirit of the forest or some shit.
Right. Yeah.
And
collect its head.
Because they have to put the spirit of the forest into the blueberry
they're
pie.
Trying to do something like not the kids, this cult is, and the kids just get involved with that. And there's all of these like fucking weird hijinks and like, where the fuck is this going? Like an epic odyssey of like really understated proportions. But I had like a blast and the cinematography for it is fucking amazing. Like there are some scenes Sasha genuinely was like, we need to fucking go wherever this is. Cause it's just gorgeous landscapes to like pull it off with 16 millimeter stock as well is really impressive. I would think 35 or like, obviously a 70 is for landscapes, but some of these things are just beautiful vistas. Characters are all charming. The interactions between some of what would be called the villains are absurd. The movie will take random turns and breaks and surprises that just feel like the production was fun. Like everybody who was in it just had a blast doing it. And it's not in the way that I've usually said it where I'm like, well, at least the actors were having fun. Like, no, it still felt like the movie came together and had a charm to it that was unique and a delightful experience. And so, like when I came out of it, there were some really great moments at the end that just kind of like continued to build on top of their quest and made it more and more fun. And I would say there was maybe like one or two times where I was like, I noticed one thing where I think one of the actors is the director, clearly the director. Mm-hmm. And that's probably the weakest part for me was just that I could tell at times I was like, this guy, I know this got to be like director or the writer or somebody they put in here. But everybody around him was doing great and they kind of carried it and they helped. And I was like, fine, I don't care. And then I found out, yes, it was Rizzulli at the end. That was that guy. So I was like, okay, cool. Well, they did it. But yeah, I'm sad I didn't see it in theaters because I would have loved to have heard like the chuckle of the audience, to felt that energy. It has that kind of conjuring of like just a bunch of kids fucking around doing like shit they shouldn't be doing, stealing things in a small town, causing a lot of shit to happen. And I don't know. It was a good time. Riddle of Fire was great.
Interesting.
It has like also interstitial moments where they do like Green Knight-esque poems and like storytelling.
Oh,
it just doesn't factor into anything else. Like I think at the beginning they say like, are you a knight or a squire? How will you solve the Riddle of Fire? And they do like rhyme scheme for different chapters in it to give it like a fairy tale quality.
Well, before you said that, I was going to say this sounds like After Hours for kids.
Kind of.
Like, kind of stuck in this weird nightmare of trying to get all the things to just like get home to just watch the TV. Like it sounds like that type of scenario. And I rewatched After Hours recently. Are there parallels there? Do you feel like there was some inspiration from that?
I would say, yeah, there's like building stakes and escalations in it that continue to lead one thing after another, kind of like, okay, what could possibly go wrong
crazier
next?
And weirder and
Yeah, the moment that like there's definitely like a build from, oh, these kids are just going around town on their bikes having a good time, and then it just suddenly shifts where it's like, nope, they stow away in like a truck, and then they end up in a totally different place, and like these new people that they're around now have like actual weapons and are dangerous, and like that kind of like level of escalation and tension just continues to build. All the while, the surrounding environment like is manufactured to some degree for the production. Like there are tree stumps and logs in like a national park where the crew, like they actually drill in very stereotypical mushrooms, like what you would think of as like Super Mario Brothers-esque kind of like red mushrooms and stuff to give it that extra fairy tale quality. It's really bizarre to see. And then the addition of two characters who have magical power and words that can control people and like some other things. It's just very bizarrely blended in a really delightful way, like super surprising. So yeah, it's like After Hours with extra steps. I suppose.
It's rated PG-13. How like appropriate of a movie.
Like, Ryan's like, I'm going to show my kids this movie. Tell me why that's like okay.
Yeah, it sounds like a good like cult movie in the making.
Yeah, very much
this
so.
This is when people are going to like a decade from now, we're going to be like, oh my God, have you seen this?
I was trying to think that too, because I feel like I was like, well, like what if my nephew watched it with me? Like how would he feel? And there's a bit of adventure. Yeah. If you're obviously morally opposed to kids who just cause trouble, like are stealing and doing these things in a town, then you're going to have a problem.
That crazy Dennis the Menace, he should not be on television.
But like these kids swear, they say fuck a few times, like 2 times, obviously. If it's PG-13, they got away with it.
I thought it's just 1. They got 2?
I think you can get 2 now.
So
they say fuck twice, and then they say hell and damn a lot. They're very precocious kids that are trying to figure out where they are. But they have these very sweet moments between each other out in the woods where they're just together, like relying on each other and trying to figure things out. They hotwire a car at one point. That's a whole thing.
It sounds like After Hours meets the Florida Project.
There's kind of that. That's what it really feels. That's what the vibe kind of ends up feeling like.
That's interesting. Yeah,
so
okay.
I don't know, like just that level of precociousness, and the kids are very aware of what they're saying. It's not like, it never feels like the precocious things that come out of their mouths are not understood by them. That's just like, I'm reading off the script. They know it, even if they can't act it or perform it as well. And there are other times in the movies where they just let them have fun as kids, and you get to just watch it. And it's like, I can tell this is pure joy, like on set, that the kids are doing this.
We watched Stand By Me, which is an excellent movie. I think I talked about it.
It's like on par with that, I would say. Like it's not going to be that same emotional journey, obviously, but
fuck more than 10 times in that movie.
Well, there you go. I think
that was the thing I did not remember about Stand By Me,
Yeah.
was like how much they fucking cussed. Yeah, it's rated R, but I'm like, in my mind,
that's
just a movie that families could watch.
That's just the dinner table at the King household.
Yeah, honestly.
10 fucks.
From our family-friendly episode where he was the only person who swore.
Check out our Encanto episode, the only episode to have bleeps in it.
But yeah, I would say like y'all watch Stand By Me, you could watch Riddle of Fire, and I think that it would be enjoyable. I feel like the family would. Darla might give you some side eye, maybe. But Darla might also be smitten by how charming the kids are. Who knows?
Possibly, yeah. It doesn't sound like a movie that would be maybe a little too weird for her, but that's fine. I still need to watch 100 beavers.
With
thousands of beavers.
Hundreds of beavers. Thousands of beavers.
Multiple hundreds.
Hundreds of thousands of beavers with the family.
But yeah, I am going to watch this movie again. It was also just like the way that it was shot, the actual use of the 16 millimeter film, especially compared to, I was thinking of Red Rocket because that's shot on 16 as well. Yeah. They're just totally different vibes. It's kind of a fascinating difference between, hey, film stock means more than just the grain level that you're going to see. It is like the color and saturation, and like seeing it that way was just great. So
I think almost every movie that I've seen shot on 16 millimeter is shot really well, because I think it's a different choice, right? And if you are making that choice to shoot your movie, you probably also have an interesting idea of how you're going to shoot your movie. And like some of the most beautiful films I've ever seen were shot on 16 millimeter. I'm like, oh, this is just like this is great. And it's you know, it has that filmic grainy quality that just looks really good. It's not, you know, as pristine as 35, but it looks really great. And I think just typically if somebody decides to shoot their movie that way, they just are into cameras and they like to do interesting shit with how they shoot their films. So
yeah, the cinematographer who worked on this one, there's a 20-minute interview on the Blu-ray with him where he talks about how like he really wanted to do this. Like he read the script, he knew all the content in it, he knew exactly what he wanted to do, and he was like, I pushed so hard to be the person that did this, and it shows. Like the movie's fucking gorgeous.
Yeah. Especially modern films, because like the cheap option is digital, right? It's not like you're shooting on 16 because you can't afford 35.
Yeah.
16 is actually more expensive than digital.
Right.
And so
right.
it's not as expensive as shooting on 35, but it is an artistic choice to make your movie have a certain feel to it. And if you're making that type of choice, that typically means you're thinking a lot about your movie and trying to craft a visual experience that is you know, an enrapturing experience for the audience.
Yeah. And so Riddle of Fire was fantastic as a first outing for, I think, both Vinegar Syndrome and Yellow Veil as a production studios and distributors to get it out to theaters. I want to see what else they're going to do. Like if they're going to kind of I'm not going to say that they're going to rival, but if they come up in the same wing as like A24, where they're producing these more unique visions, like shot on film things and this stuff, like I'm excited. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
So yeah, would recommend Riddle of Fire.
Cool. Definitely think I'll check it out. What do you think should be the follow-up for this director? Because this is his first feature length. Feels like the kind of thing you could misstep by either
I don't know
doubling down on this as your only thing or trying to shoot too far.
I don't know what he should do next because I'm not as familiar with from the style. He does like a really good. It almost feels like Sean Baker meets Wes Anderson in a weird way.
Oh, interesting.
And
okay.
There's like shots that are just like immaculate and it has this certain establishment to it. And then the characters themselves have a dialogue that has a kind of bruntness.
Does it have like a Dollhouse Wes Anderson kind of feel?
Sometimes it does. And sometimes it's like, we're just in a real supermarket or this, but other times it'll like stage sort of a campy interaction between two characters because it knows what it's playing with narratively. But I will say the only other thing I wanted to add was at the end of this movie, there's a very wholesome scene that happens, just where everything is kind of going the way that the characters want. And this music was playing. It's just this hauntingly sweet music. And I was like, I know this song from something. I was like, what the fuck is this? It can't be original score. The score for this movie is also fantastic. I loved it. But I was like, this isn't for this movie. And I Shazammed it. It's the theme for Cannibal Holocaust.
No.
It fucking just played. And I was like, if I'd never seen that movie, I never would have known it and been like, this is a very sweet theme. I want to listen to this again, like multiple times or whatever. But
you don't want to see that movie again.
Yeah. And the moment that I was like, I haven't seen that movie in 2 years and I know what this is.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Wow.
So yeah, it's packed with some of those kinds of nods, I would say.
Did they slaughter a pig on screen?
They did not do that.
That's good.
Yeah, they didn't, thankfully they didn't do those things. But
that wasn't an ingredient in blueberry pie.
But yeah, like
red berry pie.
Got one of those things where I feel like there are probably other nods to cult film in it, but they're not like egregious and they're not like on the sleeve of I watch film, here you go kind of thing. So it fit all together really well. And once I got that Cannibal Holocaust thing, I was like, I got to go back and watch this again and see if maybe I missed something. Maybe Schlocktober this year will remind me or reveal new things in this movie. Who knows? But yeah.
Nice. All right. Riddle of Fire. That's a recommend.
There you go.
Let's see. I watched Beetlejuice. It was fine. I laughed, but I'll talk about something else.
Sure, please.
Ended up watching a documentary. Darla had just started it, and I just kind of got enraptured. I was doing something else in the kitchen, and then I just was like, all right, now I got to sit down and watch this because it was one of those like unbelievable, like this, what happened? And then the further it drags on. So talking about Netflix's Take Care of Maya.
Beata and I had a beautiful family. But then Maya started to get sick.
Maya had advanced complex regional pain syndrome, and we know what the best therapy is for it. It's called ketamine.
We were just blessed that we finally seen something working. But Maya relapsed. Beata's explaining to the emergency room, this is what needs to be done.
You don't understand how much medication it takes to control her pain.
But they didn't listen.
They accused Beata of medical child abuse.
And that's when they told me I had to leave. That my daughter is under state custody.
They would try to convince me that my mom was doing things to me.
I do not want my child to suffer. She is still my child.
Our family was falling apart.
You're gonna cause more problems.
I'm fighting for my child. How should I feel?
No matter what we did, the court sided with the hospital staff.
Judges don't care about evidence.
You don't get to the truth by accepting what's in front of you without questioning it. And I realized that this was a lot bigger than just the Kowalskis.
How many times are you allowed to be wrong and destroy lives before they say, okay, that's enough?
These families walked in hoping for help for their child, and some of them walked out in handcuffs.
This is one of those like absolute gut punches. And I think as a documentary, the fact that it you just kind of keep sitting there being like, how is this possible? How does this keep going? What keeps happening? And then it's real. Like, it doesn't sound like it should be real. The Maya, titular Maya, as a young girl, she had a disorder. She was getting treatment for it, but kind of like coming and going with her symptoms. And her family had rushed her to the hospital, where the hospital, doing what it's supposed to do, was concerned that she actually was being abused or was a Munchausen by proxy kind of situation, and called it into protective services. And this is in Florida, where it was a privately run protective services, not state. So that opens up one hole. They ended up taking Maya away from her family and placing her in a care in the hospital. And the family, like, just is trying to get through to them. Like, we have multiple doctors who've diagnosed her with this condition. She's under treatment. She's under the treatment of a specific doctor. They had that doctor send letters to the hospital. And the whole time the hospital was like, no, like, she doesn't have that. You're wrong. The mom, you're abusing her. And this like drags on for a few months. And because they're not really treating the daughter in the hospital, she's actually getting worse. And yeah, like kind of seeing this, and they have footage like from the hospital, like things that they had back then. They kind of talk about it and work it through. You get interviews with the family to hear like their stories and hear it from them and how, you know, how messed up they felt this was. It really turns into this horrible thing that the mother ends up being like so upset that she takes her own life and essentially writes a note saying, if you think I abused my daughter or whatever, because they were really like, it's the mom. Like, they were just really locked in the mom. They weren't saying that the dad had anything to do with it. And so she's like, there, now you can let my daughter go. And like, they have the fucking 911 call from the dad. And then they have like the daughter when she finds out, and they have shots from the funeral, like all of these things that I was just like, it's a perfect capture of a horrible moment in time that had an impact on these people. And then they like begin to talk about the fallout of like getting Maya back and collecting up all of what they had, finding out that the hospital had been charging Medicare for exactly the disease that she did have from the start. So they knew that she had it, but they were keeping her there. Yeah, there was like increased abuse at the hospital. Like, it just goes on and on. The doctor that was keeping her there, they ended up uncovering like all these other cases where she also was the one who ended up with kids who came in from protective services that turned out not to be needed, but she made the situation like so much worse. And it's one of those like, it's crazy, the systems, right, in the United States, and some of these things that go so far to protect some people and hide it, right, and then like so quickly can hurt others and then not care, be very like indifferent to it. And that some of this is like the protection of the government, and what is its obligations. Some of it is the, medical boards that hide these doctors that are making really horrible decisions and moving them to other hospitals where they make really horrible decisions.
Sounds like the Catholic Church or the police.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Oh man, we watched one on like a Catholic abuse thing too this last week. Same. I was like, oh my, how many different?
Are you okay, Ryan?
Yeah.
Yes. How many different churches can you move this guy to before you realize there's a problem?
Quite a shell game.
Yeah, and even then, it's like the hospital beyond this thing. Like after we watched it, I went to look up like, okay, well, what actually like happened with the court case, and looked at the hospital. You look at their Wikipedia page, and it lists not just this, but also like a whole separate thing that they were like fucking up on, like all of these kids that were coming in with this other stuff, and their like NICU unit was terrible, and like it goes on and on and on. That hospital's still fucking open. Like that was the part where I'm like, and it still gets like awards. Right? Because like that's how the medical system works, that everyone is like the best doctor of 2023, even though they were or weren't, like they just paid to get the award and get into that magazine, right? Like stuff like that you just can't trust the system. And then hearing these stories and hearing the people like lose their faith in it. And again, it's like you want to take your kid in for care. You hear something like this and then you're scared, like, are they actually going to get what they need? Like, am I going to be trusted? Right. And the system is so fast to take kids away in some cases, and it takes forever to get them into some placement, whether it's back with their parents, their family, foster adoption, that kid is like grown up by the time they finally get into something stable.
Yeah.
Or they have where they trust the family way too much, or give it to, another family member that's just as, or if not more abusive, and just kind of continue kicking the can that way. And it's sort of this like broken system in every direction. Like it brought back some things for me because we did foster, and while we fostered, I had to call myself in to CPS because of the way the rules work.
What?
And it was like just one of those really bizarre things. She had broken her arm, not under our care. She was visiting family.
Yeah.
100% it was an accident. She slipped, and it wasn't even like a huge break. Like it was not immediately clear like what the extent of the damage was until we got an x-ray at the hospital. And the policy is you have to call it in. Like if you take them to the hospital and they're under your care, you have to call it in like right away. And so I'm like sitting there like, I have to call the number. I have to be like, here's who it is. Here, this is me. This is what happened. And they start an investigation. Sure, like it's fine because like all the evidence easily pointed to she fell and she wasn't there. Like I had my alibis, like or whatever, what have you. But it is just a surreal moment to be like, the system is like so distrusting of me, but weirdly was really trusting of her family historically, right? And just thinking about that to be like, and in some cases, if they make up their mind not to trust the family, there's nothing you can do. Like this body of evidence you have to bring back is like impossible to get over. And this family is still going through this ordeal, like all from that care, to finally getting her back, to collecting up all this evidence. They sued the hospital. The hospital drags it out, right? They bring in their lawyers. They drag this whole thing out because they know as soon as it gets to court, no jury is going to like do anything but fuck them over. And then they're appealing because they felt like the settlement was too large. So they're dragging the family back in to have to talk about all this again. Like, and it just not ending. And like, even within the documentary, it doesn't get to the latest updates of some of the court stuff, but like they like extend the court thing out. And Maya goes home and it's just like, I just want it to end. She's like, it just will never end. It's so long ago. Like, I just want to move on and it just will never end. Like what we've been dragged into. And yeah, it's just crazy to be like that one, that moment and a couple decisions. And then suddenly this family's just trajectory is entirely changed.
Damn.
So you're telling me that this privatized social worker, which let's just take a second to realize how.
Can you say it in a simple Southern lawyer accent as you start here?
It just like recently watched Sharp Objects and was like, I think that's what's happening to this kid, and then just like ripped her away from her family, and like she had the actual disease they thought she did, and they just fucked up their whole lives.
Right. Yeah, pretty much. And they sent them.
Insane.
Yeah, and it was, the hospital like also extended this out, and they like sent the hospital all this evidence. They had previous doctors she'd been to. They had one of the doctors like actually call and tell them like I diagnosed her with this, and they just continued to ignore it until after, when the mother dies, the dad finally gets temporary custody to take her to a completely different specialist who immediately diagnosed her with what she had and was like, yeah, that's 100% what she has, and began treating her, and she immediately started getting better again. And like, I'm like, when they took it to a jury, it's like fucking so clear how horrible
Oh my God.
mistakes they made.
I fucking hate hospitals and doctors so fucking much. Like, it's just the whole system is so fucked and so corrupt, and it's just like it's all owned by insurance companies and bureaucrats, and it's just so it's just terrible. Like, it's not a place where you can actually go and get help and get healing and get better. It's just like a place where you become just a widget in a system, and you're just pushed through, and they just do the same things. It doesn't really matter what your situation is or what you have. It's just like they provide you the treatment that the standard thing says, and they move on, and they don't listen to family. They don't actually care what's going on. And man, like I don't know, like my dad died in a hospital a couple of years ago from COVID, and it's like that just brings back so many horrible memories for me, dealing with doctors that were like, it's like, well, we just have to give him the treatment that the hospital and the insurance company says we can't do anything else. I'm like, it's not working. He's dying. Like, what if we try other things? I spent all night. I didn't sleep last night. I spent all night researching like all these other options that we could try that like doctors in Africa and different parts of the world are having success with. What if we try this? And they're like, we're a fucking professional hospital. We can't just do willy-nilly treatments because you think we should. Like, we're not going to do that. I'm like, but you're not doing anything. Like, all you're doing is giving him IVs and oxygen. Like, you're not doing it in a steroid, and that's it. And it's not working. You're not doing anything. Well, what are you going to do? Like, we're not. That's all we're going to do. And like, if he dies, he dies. And we're not going to try anything else.
The Ivan Drago doctor.
It's just like, it's just like, we are only going to do the things that we like are not going to like risk our liability. Yep. And we know they don't work, but we're going to do them anyway. And yeah, we've heard about other things around the world, but they're like, we're not going to try those things. And, if that's it, like, he's just going to die. And, I don't know. It's just like the fucking like factory hospital system that has just been, it just gets worse every year, every president. It gets worse and worse with new legislation that's passed. It's like, what if we made our healthcare system more complicated than it used to be? And we just keep adding on things that just make the process, just add more paperwork, make everything worse, more confusing and difficult to sift through. And it's just, man, it's just terrible. Like, if you like, I don't know, like, it's got like, I go to a doctor who doesn't take insurance, and it's like, it's a way better experience because it's just like not, I just pay him a subscription fee, and it sucks that I have to do that, but it's like you get way better care than if you're in like the fucking machine of the system that you normally do. And it's just like, I don't know. I feel like from a healthcare standpoint, we live in a third world country, and like, when you add on to that the privatization of normally public services like child protective services and other things that are supposed to be for the good of society, that should be done by the government, who is not incentivized one way or another by why is there a profit motivation on taking your child away,
taking kids away?
Yeah, it's just like fucking insane, man. It's like that's I feel like what you just described is just like, there's just so many things like why our country just fucking sucks. It's just I don't know.
I heard it like these privatizations of mental health situations where they ended up keeping kids in places. Like there was one place, I think it was in Florida, where this judge kept recommending him to this private institution instead. It was like, well, he's like, you're guilty. You could go like 1 year like guilty and have the charge and go to juvie, or you can go to this other place and get help and we won't make you guilty. But then they end up getting stuck in that system for years because they keep saying like, well, they're not healthy enough to leave. They're not healthy enough to, because they need the money, right? Like they're incentivized to keep them and get people in, not
once
help
somebody
them.
says you're crazy, you can't, like, if you say you're not crazy,
You can't
then
argue
you just
it, yeah.
sound crazy, you know? It's like you just get stuck in that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then hearing these doctors that, perform surgeries on people, and you hear how many deaths they ended up having, and they look
Dr.
back
Nick?
and it's like they never Dr. Nick.
Hi,
they
everybody.
never successfully pulled it off. They've only killed people, and you're like, did they ever know how to do spine surgery? Like,
That was like,
how did they keep going through the system?
Side tangent, real quick. Feel free to cut this part out. But that's like that. There's that Trump appointed judge. I think it's like name is Jimmy Ho or something like that.
Jimmy Hoffa?
He's not Hoffa, but he's somewhere near there. And like his dad is like notoriously bad gynecologist who botched so many abortions he like fled the country. And now this judge is also like sitting on the seats, and he's one of those, like, he's a conservative who doesn't care that he like waves his political affiliation around for everybody to see in his like decisions, and he brags about like all the fucking judgments he passes that are in favor of his political leanings.
Is he on the Federalist Society short list
I'm
for
pretty
the
sure
Supreme
he's
Court?
Right.
Yeah, it's one of those where he's like kind of up if Trump wins again, like he's up for consideration.
Oh my
and he's
God.
very much another traditionalist who believed in like what Scalia was proposing and like
Originalism?
Yeah, he has that
The
originalism.
dumbest
yeah.
legal ideology.
He's
that
100% on top of that. But
developed.
there's like, I listened to like a 50-minute profile about him. It was fascinating where they talked about how of all the things that he's against, he's actually against Trump on immigration things because he is an immigrant and he believes firmly in that. But he doesn't use that empathetically to connect in any way beyond just like immigrants should be given a chance. Like there's no other aspect of it where he's just like, yeah, maybe I should rethink that. He's like, nah, fuck it. He's in that Clarence Thomas camp of like, I'll fucking go enjoy a golf course, tour with whoever and do these fucking
I'll go on a
things.
$2 million vacation with a mega donor whose case I'm set to hear next month.
Yeah, exactly. Anyways, that's the
I'll say it's probably illegal for me to have married my wife, but that won't happen to me.
Yeah.
Interracial marriage is only okay if I do it.
Yeah, it's fine for me. Yeah. Yeah, so there's tons of stuff to Netflix to check out if you want to lose your faith in all of society's institutions.
Jesus, man. Seriously, are you all right? You watched this and you watched some other fucked up shit this week? Are you okay?
Yeah. I was going to say, I also watched the one where that guy that was supposed to be taking sperm donations for families that couldn't conceive, and he was just giving his own sperm and had like hundreds of kids in the same one town that were actually his. Like he got fucked when 23andMe came out.
Oh, I bet.
Like it went off the way. Yeah.
A modern day municipal Genghis Khan.
Isn't there a Simpsons episode about that? Like Homer giving a bunch
Probably.
of sperm donations and
Oh yeah. Yeah. Somebody out there, can you please make another one of the buying a homes on a beach show? Because Darla watched all of them and now we're into crime again. So
Oh my God.
You like that better than the true crime shit?
at least I walk away being like, yeah, I don't know, that'd be cool to have a house like that.
That's a neat house. Yeah, you're not just like, and then the husband was murdered. And like,
Yes.
Yeah.
No, she watched the one on, what was his name? Was it Peterson or whatever, where he
Jordan
supposedly
Peterson?
killed his wife out? Yeah, I don't remember. Wait, Scott Peterson? But he had like bought a boat that he didn't tell anyone about, and he like secretly put it in his warehouse, and he made his own cement anchors, one of which was missing, and he told the police he had gone fishing at the place that they found her body.
Oh, come
and
on.
I was like watching that, and I was like, man, if I ever buy a boat or make my own anchors, I'm gonna fucking like yell it. I'm not gonna hide it.
Yeah.
Like, cause I was like, I think about these kind of things as like as a husband, that it's like anything that's slightly suspicious, I need to get out there really quickly before anyone, like something happens, and then suddenly they're like, why are you making your own?
Then suddenly the
Anchors.
Anatomy of a Fall is made about you.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry you're stuck having to watch true crime, Ryan. I don't really understand. Like my girlfriend is really into that. I don't understand why. Like every millennial woman loves true crime. I don't understand it.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's a thing, but I don't know why that is. And yeah, it's just, I don't find it very interesting. It's just like, here's an expose of stupid people that did stupid crimes that were like then found out because they were stupid.
You're doing like the fucking Rick and Morty interdimensional game. Here's a quick mystery. I did it. I'm the killer. Here's my cuff me. Thank you very much.
Yeah. We also watched all of Shogun, so
hey, there you go.
In there.
That's
I
great.
quite enjoyed that.
Dixon loves Cosmos, whatever the fuck that actor's name is. The guy who always swears every time that he's calling, 'cause he's like, "You piss on a bastard," blah blah blah. Like, we watched one episode of that. And you were like, "This is great."
We did.
I like this guy.
Nice.
All right. Anyways,
well, cool. All right. So let's kick it to Dixon. What did you watch?
All right, so I got a text from John a week or two ago, and he was like, "Hey, I just watched this movie, Strange Darling. It was really good. You should go check it out." And I was like, "I'm on a work trip. I'm in New York. I don't know if I'll have time." And he was like, "Oh, you're lucky. Actually, there are more showtimes in New York. If you can find some time, you should go see it." So I was able to find some time. I was on this work trip, went and saw Strange Darling.
Do you have any idea the kind of risks a woman like me takes every time she agrees to have a little fun?
Never thought about it that way.
Of course you haven't. You're not a woman. You seem like a nice guy. But the real issue is safety. That's life or tough. So I'm gonna have to ask you a question. Are you a serial killer?
What did you just say? Here, kitty, kitty, kitty.
Can you help me, please?
Here, kitty, kitty, kitty. Here, kitty, kitty, kitty.
And I texted John afterward, and I was like, "What the fuck? Why did you like this movie? This was a piece of shit." And so I'm interested to have a conversation here, and like we're probably going to get into spoilers because I liked this movie and John didn't. And in order for us to
wait,
really
you
have the
reverse
conversation,
it. Reverse it. You didn't like this movie, and I did.
I did not like this movie. John did like this movie. I've had too much moonshine. So we're probably gonna get into spoilers here. We're definitely gonna get into spoilers. If you're not into, if you want to see Strange Darling, go check it out. If you were into that, I wouldn't recommend it, but John would. But anyway, Strange Darling is a movie that is edited out of order in a Tarantino Pulp Fiction style, which I always hate. I just don't really understand.
Yeah, you even hated Pulp Fiction.
I don't like Pulp Fiction. I will be upfront about that. Like, I don't really understand. Like, Pulp Fiction, I feel like to me, if you just edit it in order, it would be super boring. I don't really know why, like, people think that is such an innovative filmmaking technique to just like show the movie out of order. Like, there's good dialogue in Pulp Fiction, but very empty characters, and I don't really feel like it like builds anything or has a lot of interesting to say. But like, I feel like it's just like, oh, I don't feel confident in the story I'm telling, so I'm just going to show it out of order to like throw the audience off and make them think I'm some sort of mastermind who's like telling a story in an interesting way. But I think it really just for the most part shows a kind of a lack of depth in the story that you have. This movie, I think there is actually an interesting reason to do it in this movie, but I didn't really like what I thought the message of the film was, and I'm interested to hear, John, what you have to say on that. But yeah, essentially, Strange Darling, over the course of its 6 chapters that are all played out of order, follows a man and a woman who go on a date, and the woman is, kind of acting like, oh, I don't know if we should do this, like, I don't really know you. It's a one-night stand. We went to a motel. Should we really, go through with this? I don't want to act like I'm, just a slut or whatever. And, acting kind of like a wary and afraid of the dude. The dude's kind of an asshole, and so they kind of pose him as this villain character. But then the woman is like really into like bondage and like asking him to do really fucked up things to her.
BDSM stuff, yeah.
Yeah, and like she's really like driving what's going on and asking him to like berate her and hit her and do all this stuff and then like, he's like very much going out of his way to be very polite and acting like he's like, not wanting to go past any boundaries or anything. And then it leads to her committing violence against him and then like running off into the woods and him chasing her for the second half of the movie and like trying to get revenge on her for the assault that she did against him. And I don't know, it felt like to me, first of all, the movie is really well shot. In the opening like frame of the movie, it says like this film was shot 100% on 35 millimeter.
Very proud about that.
That's really cool. Like that doesn't happen very often anymore. It looks great. It's shot really well. I thought it was acted pretty well. I just didn't really know what the point was. It's like the story felt to me like a right-wing fantasy about like, I'm just this good guy who goes out of his way to do everything to make sure that the woman feels comfortable and I'm not like pushing past her boundaries, but she's just such a goddamn bitch. And she's like, women are like all powerful in society and like emasculate men and like take away their power. And like, she's actually the asshole and like attacked me. And like, society frames me as the bad guy because they show some of the later scenes early of him tracking her down with like a rifle, trying to murder her in the woods. And you're like, oh my God, like this evil guy and this victim. And then they show that she actually did these horrible things to him and he's just out seeking revenge. And it felt to me like this just kind of fucked up gender ideology story of this like dude who just tried so hard to be a nice guy and just couldn't. He just reached his breaking point because these goddamn bitches out there are just such assholes. And then he had to just go out and murder her in the woods. And there was no other option. He just had to go out and chase her in the woods and kill her with a rifle. And I don't know. Like it was a well-made movie. It was shot really well. I loved that it was shot on film. I thought that the story was kind of horrendous. I gave it a 1.5 stars on Letterboxd, and I believe John, you gave it a 4.5.
Yeah, that's why I was so surprised that you would give it a 1.5, given that you love Dirty Harry, and that's just a fucking wet dream. but it is. Sure. I get where you're coming from for it, because there is like, well, first of all, it starts with an introductory sequence past the 35 millimeter, like entirely shot on 35. And then it does a Texas Chainsaw Massacre send up where it's like in 2021.
Hey,
like,
do you think they think they're going to find us? You think they wrote this shit on our car because they're going to track us down?
If it was about Franklin trying to hunt this
That's just all Franklin, yeah.
But it starts about it being like, oh, this is about the most like notorious serial killer in 2021 who got away with these things, and like it sets the stage for it to be all about who is like the killer here.
You think the dude is the killer? He's got a mustache.
Yeah.
He seems like an asshole.
He's like hopped up on adrenaline. He's doing cocaine a shit ton.
Yeah,
and like to do who knows what. And there's like that whole aspect of it. It's funny because when I got out of this movie with Sasha, she turned to me and I was like, what did you think about the movie? And she was like, well, it feels like it's kind of like too soon. Why would they do this? And I was like, it's not a real story. She's like, but it said it was based on a true story. I was like, no, that's the Coen brothers have done that like so many times. This is not based on a true story. Yeah. This is just bullshit. And it did a Texas Chainsaw Massacre thing. She's like, oh, well then I liked it a lot more. I thought it was like too soon if we're really doing this, but I also was like, I didn't hear about any of this fucking shit. But like I enjoyed the way that it played with those gender expectations because the history of serial killers in America is predominantly male. You have Ted Bundy, who is like very fucking charming and can get his own way however he wants to do things. And you have Ed Kemper and fucking Zodiac and like whatever. Who nobody
Ted
knows
Cruz.
who Zodiac is. Yeah, Ted Cruz shirt is Zodiac, of course, we all know. But there's just that long history kind of leads the audience into this lull of like, okay, well, this guy's clearly doing it. And to watch the movie sort of start to twist that as it plays through with who really is here at odds. It's also got like really weird stylistic choices that I liked watching that are just like oddly funny at times. There's an old hippie couple that makes like the grossest fucking breakfast.
Ed Begley Jr.
Yeah, Ed Begley Jr.
Oh, he's great.
And they set up
they put like a whole stick of butter in the breakfast that they make. Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. It's just, it's insane, Ryan. Like some of these scenes are very much like, this is a fucking cult movie where they knew what they were doing at different parts of it. But like they throw out all these little like, subversions as you're going. Like at one point, Ed Begley Jr. is talking about how he used to be a biker and he still has a bike and it kind of works and it's in the garage. And like I feel like it played so much with the horror tropes, and the ultimate message of it was the similar kind of message that I guess you would get from like Fincher's Gone Girl, where you're like, it's just playing with gender tropes. It's playing with like how weak you think a woman might be and how strong you think a man might be, and like the level of sensitivity that both are capable of and the level of veracity that both are capable of. And so like by the time that the credits rolled, I had no allegiance to either party because both fucked up and like just constantly and did fucked up shit constantly. Like when there's a whole sequence where we find out that like the man is actually part of the police force, and instead of like calling it in, he's actively pursuing just like vigilante justice on this woman, and then calls in his friend when he has a spot of trouble and is like, I got a mess that you got to help me come clean up. It's not like endorsing the law enforcement that's within it. There are a few scenes where it feels like it can lean a little heavily one way or the other and sort of like thumbs its nose at these aspects. Like there's one cop that's always like, we need to always follow protocol. And it sort of leads to like, how harsh does that really make you as a law enforcement officer? But then later it kind of doubles back on that and is like, well, you know, if you don't follow protocol, you're kind of a dumb bitch about it. Like it's like literally what the cop says is like a dumb bitch for somebody not following protocol. And I think that those moments weave in and out of like kind of how the audience might be feeling given your knowledge of the situation. They're meant to be more cathartic than they are an endorsement of like, here's the ideology or the philosophy to follow. And so like when I watched it that way, I appreciated the meta aspects of it. The moment that it said a story told in 6 chapters, I had 2 thoughts. One was, okay, come on. And then the other was
that was my thought.
Yeah. And then the other was, okay, well, at least I like know where this will eventually be going. And it's interesting because,
and it's like chapter 5. You're
yeah.
Like, oh, God.
You're like, okay, here we go. Yeah. It rolls. It even playfully rolls the numbers back to like chapter 3.
Yeah.
But like the scenes are so beautifully shot. There's such a cool dripping style to a lot of the lighting done.
Yeah.
It's hard to deny how
it's very well made.
Fantastic it's made. Like it just is so cool. It's also the cinematographer is Giovanni Ribisi, who is an actor who's been in like so many fucking movies. It's kind of wild.
He's a very good actor.
Got up there and did cinematography and was like, he just fucking wanted to do it, and he knocked it out of the fucking park. But yeah, like I just found the composition of the film to be overwhelmingly like great, and I loved those aspects of it. And like the small nits that I had didn't end up being something that like would hold me back story wise or any of that, because I think that this is where the difference comes in, is that I've seen it done poorly so many different ways at this point, Dixon.
Yeah.
And you've only known like all the other ways that it could, or like the other kind of messages that have come from good film.
I mean, like,
that, like
as a schlock film,
yes,
this is a masterpiece.
Oh yeah, it's a masterclass in how to do those things and what the subject matter could be. But I enjoyed the musings about it. I think that it was also respectful to that, even if it is playing with these gender roles, it is still being mindful of like, well, what if either one of these people are serial killers? Not so much like, I think that it is meant to like break the audience's mind a little bit towards the end and just be like, what did we learn here today? And like, how can we think about gender roles when we're assigning them to like even just a serial killer? Like, what does it mean to be threatening? What does it mean to have these things? And like, the serial killer, the woman in this, Ryan, she uses like a phrase frequently, which is, "Can you help me, please?" is like becomes the thing. And it changes context over the course of the film, where initially it's genuine and you feel it. And then later it becomes a terrifying thing to hear her say to somebody. And there's sort of like this flip of like, when is that favor going to be called in? Or like that sort of, I need you as a human being to like believe me. And I can see where that becomes the muddled message of like, you have the, believe her over like so much time, like women have just not been believed in their claims. And then to have a movie that's talking about it in this particular context can feel like poor taste. But that's why I kind of like roll it into like Fincher's Gone Girl. And I think that like Gone Girl is just an excellently executed film. It's a really well done thriller, but like, what the fuck is the message of it other than it to be an entertaining ride?
I mean, I loved Gone Girl when I saw it in theaters. I have not seen it since, and I felt like it was just like one of the most fucked up stories that I'd ever seen. I thought it was really interesting and really well done.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like a political statement to me, and Strange Darling did. And I feel like there are just so many moments in this movie where it's like, the process of switching the point of view from like, oh, she's the victim to she's the serial killer. And actually he's just a nice guy that just is just trying to just find a nice girl and keeps getting punished for it.
Well, first of all, he was cheating on his wife. There was.
I don't remember that he had a wife.
That was a whole thing he talked about.
But anyway, like he's, I don't know. Like I saw the twist coming immediately, and I was just like, I don't know. I know exactly where this is going. Like everything that I thought was going to happen ended up happening. I was just like, I don't know. I think this movie is not as clever as it thinks it is, and this scenario switching thing. And then like it's just there's so many times where it's like he just goes out of his way to be like, oh, I'm so sorry. Are you okay? And you told me to do all these things, but like I want to make sure you're all right and that your mental health is okay and all these things. And then she's just like such an asshole to him through all that, and like ends up doing horrible things to him. And like it's just like then you find out he's a cop and all these things, and it just feels like red meat propaganda of like middle America cops are just such good people, and everybody tries to paint them as these evil villains. And just like this movie is showing that they're these horrible people at the start, but then you realize actually they're the good guys, and it's these goddamn bitches who are like trying to take over the world and like out run their place in society, that like actually they're just like being terrible to all of our nice white middle America cops. And I was just like, I just can't deal with this shit anymore. Like it's just, I felt like I was getting that message just pummeled at me throughout from the whole second and third act of the movie. I felt like that's what I was getting fed the entire time. And it was just like, I feel like if it was trying to be a little bit more nuanced about gender and roles and stuff, I feel like maybe it could have been interesting if they were like at the start, like this is a movie about the most notorious serial killer of whatever. And if they had made it like unclear who that person was over the course of the film, I think that could have been interesting. If they're like, actually they're both kind of shitheads and you don't necessarily know who the film was talking about because they're both horrible and they're both doing terrible things, then I think that might have been a more like balanced approach to the story and something that I might have like latched onto a little bit more. But it just felt like just such culture war propaganda to me that I was just like, I just can't. I can't deal with this anymore.
So like, it's fascinating to hear, that like that perspective on it, because like I had people come out of that theater with me that were talking about how wild it was, and like they didn't expect the twists and that kind of thing. And so I think it speaks to more of like a literacy, like just a different kind of literacy in film that like leads to those different conclusions. Cause like I still see the parallels between it and Gone Girl. Gone Girl has a lot to say about the social perception of how you deal with your grief when somebody goes missing or dies. And this one, I felt like it was much more of like imposed upon you of like, where does the line end for certain like consent and certain expectations to be set about your role in like a particular relationship with somebody? And that was what I found fascinating with it, was like, even when there was like cat and mouse aspects going on, I was occasionally flipping back to like, I don't know if is it going to do it? I don't know if it's going to do that. I don't know if these things are going to go like this way. And the Texas Chainsaw like prelude sort of set the stage for me to be like, okay, regardless of who the killer is, are we going to get one of those like mystical endings where it actually turns out that this was never solved, and we drive off into the distance and Leatherface is there like chainsawing up and down in the fucking sunset kind of thing. But it ends on a oddly like sympathetic note, or like even an empathetic note. Like the last like few minutes of it is watching the character die, like bleed out, like an instinctual animal just sort of breathing and trying to like survive. And it just goes to black and white, which is what it faded in from at the beginning. I felt like there was something weird like pulling within it beyond like that. I don't know, the overarching message that like either of us parsed, where it's just like, I just don't know what the fuck this is. Cause to some degree I found myself in both characters at different times. And I thought that was the interesting thing about the movie, more so than like an overarching message about gender roles or like the actual role of police or what this could be. And so that's why I liked it. And when I got out, I was like, it's interesting. Like whatever you were going to see, you were going to have some reaction to it. You had a visceral one, which, you know, that happens. But like, I think I sent you like a text where I was like, well, at least we both did our part and saw an indie film that was shot on 35. Yeah. So like that was our takeaway. But
like at least neither of us saw Beetlejuice.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm always happy to not see a Tim Burton movie. That's fine.
But yeah, I feel like this discussion has kind of deepened my appreciation for the film, made me like it a little bit more, just because now I can carry in that other perspective too and like look at it this way. Also the fact that it was just impeccably shot and like the production was,
it looks great.
Kyle Gallner and what was the actress's name? Hold on, I have it here. Willa Fitzgerald. I thought that they both, Willa Fitzgerald and Kyle Gallner, did like fantastic fucking
They did. They were both very good in it. And like that's why I gave it 1.5, honestly, on my list. I was like, it's very well made. And like I hate everything this movie is trying to say that I am interpreting that the movie's trying to say. Like obviously John is taking away different things from it. Like if I was just interpreting it based on the message it was saying, I would have given it the lowest possible rating. But like I gave it 1.5 because I was like, it's really well done. Like you know, there are good things to take away from this as far as just the cinematography and the filmmaking. And I hated the fucking reverse scene editing. Just we're going to show these in random order because we feel like it. But aside from that, the filmmaking is really well done. Yeah.
Yep. Well, Ryan, given that you've just watched a late night debate in which their dogs are eating cats and they're eating cats and dogs and whatever the fuck else, how do you feel?
Eating the dogs.
Are you gonna watch?
They're coming in and they're using the pets for food.
Using them for food is a phrase that I will never forget. It's just imprinted in my brain.
Using them for food.
Yeah.
Oh God.
What was it he said about I have a hint of a plan? What was
I have concepts of a plan.
Concepts of a plan.
Yeah.
We think we might be giving people some form of health care. We're not quite sure, but we're looking into it very closely.
It's a definite possible maybe.
Yeah, I've had 9 years to come up with a concept of a plan.
Not that Kamala has one either, but yeah.
Oh,
I was already mildly interested in Strange Darling. I think the fact that you guys, now that it sounds divisive in that way, it has kind of overwhelmingly high praise from critics.
It does. Yeah. I am definitely not in the mainstream opinion on this for sure.
Yeah, but it's not like we are either. So I had seen an interview with Tarantino where he was talking about nonlinear storytelling, and he was, pumping himself up. But it was interesting hearing how he was. Yeah, it was interesting. He was talking
about Tarantino
about,
likes Tarantino films.
Yes.
He was saying how he's pumping his Quentin.
Oh
yeah. He was saying how if Pulp Fiction was a book and was nonlinear, that no one would talk about it being nonlinear. That like in a book you can get away with that. And I was like, kinda. Like I get what he's saying, but it's also like a completely different medium. But it was making me start to think about like, all right, well, is he actually? Because he was like, 75% of the stories would suck if you did them nonlinearly, but there's 25 that are good if you do them.
Yeah.
And I was like, is that true? Like, I was trying to think about that already. So it'd be interesting to see another.
That seems like a high percentage. 25% of stories done non-linearly or better. That seems wrong.
I guess he's saying there's some movies out there that are linear that are shitty that would be better if they were non-linear.
Tarantino has done what are the movies he's done that are like actually linear? Because we have like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is linear, but like Reservoir Dogs is non-linear. Pulp Fiction's non-linear.
Saying
Jackie
like
Brown
flashbacks don't count,
Yeah,
right?
okay.
Yeah, Hateful Eight is linear.
Hateful Eight is linear, except for it's split into 2 chapters and reversed.
What are you talking about?
Like you have like a really long
Kinda.
flashback, I guess, where it sets up like what's going on.
Yeah, there are flashbacks,
but
during
it starts at
but
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I got you.
Inglourious Bastards is linear.
Yeah.
Django.
I think he's kind of like honestly gone linear.
Yeah,
like he's known as this like non-linear, but I'm like, really, it's just his first 2.
Yeah.
It's honestly pretty linear from there on out.
That's true.
And Reservoir Dogs, I think it works. And in Pulp Fiction, I just don't.
I feel like
I just don't think it adds anything to the story, and I feel like people are like, "Oh my god, there's just a mind-blowing innovation in cinema that just did something totally different." I'm like, he just edited it poorly, and you're like, it's saying that makes the movie better.
Is it the declaration of like
the reels were played out of
or-
order by accident? You're like, "Oh my god, this is fucking fascinating." You're like,
Well, I don't know. I feel like there's been other movies that have done, not to say like Rashomon is one that's non-linear because it's more of just playing with like what is
that's
the
different.
truth. But you have like,
Yeah.
that's kind of, I feel like what non-linear gets at is like trying to play with what your sense of expectation is based on how you lay out the story.
absolutely.
And
yeah,
it just becomes like, I feel like when you get title cards involved, then you're like, oh, you fucking prick. Like the moment that you see.
Yeah.
But if you're like, when the fuck did this happen? There's a fine line between a Tarantino and a fucking Chris Nolan when you're trying to do what we're doing reverse, we're doing non-linear, we're doing something else. And
we're
so
just
I feel
gonna
like it can be
splice
done.
different timelines together in monochromatic and color.
I feel like it can be done well, and I feel like a non-linear can be done well, but it's one of those things where it's like, I don't know what the golden standard would be for it. I have no idea what that looks like.
It becomes very tiresome to me, and it feels like it feels like the director trying to make you work. Like they're like, you wouldn't pay attention to this unless I like made it out of order so that you would have to like really follow what's going on, and like that's gonna make you engage more than you otherwise would. And I'm like, could you just trust your audience?
Yeah.
Like I'm here at your movie. I'm ready to watch what you're showing me. Like this is not a trailer. I'm already here. Like, tell me your story in the most compelling way you can. Don't fuck around with me.
I think that it speaks to a technical ability, or it's something that's explored in the art form that's interesting, because you have things that start, like let's start at the end, then let's go to the middle, and then we go to the beginning.
Yeah.
Or let's start at the end and go to the beginning and go to the middle. And to do like something nonlinear like Pulp Fiction does, it's trying to get more granular in how it breaks down those things. And for an audience that may not see the movie again, how exactly do you achieve that kind of editing for it? It's actually kind of interesting because I recently got a copy of Late Night with the Devil, and it includes a VHS tape that is just the actual, like, supposedly, quote unquote, of course, that's for the marketing things, the night in question when everything happened, and it removes all of the actual cinematic elements of the movie and just lets it be the studio televised event.
Like single cam.
Yeah, single cam. Like it's like 3 cam operators on a studio floor.
Yeah.
Let's let it happen, and you have none of the emotional context, none of the things. And I watched a behind the scenes where they talked about it, and they were like, the Q&A, like MC was like, can we just, why wouldn't you just do it that way? Why wouldn't you just do like found footage? And the director and like editor and even David Desmalkian was there. I'm just like, it wouldn't be engaging for audiences. We can't trust the audience with that. It's interesting to think about that. And I feel like for Tarantino or for somebody else, like once you know the order of the way a story's told, it's interesting to switch up those pieces and really experience it that way. And I feel like in this instance for Strange Darling, it really was to play with like slashers and serial killers. And I'm curious if Darla watched it, what she would think, Ryan, about this, because it is very much like that. Well, the moment that she realizes that he's a cop, she'd be like, what the fuck? But like, there's that kind of like moment where a true, you have a moment where you're making assumptions and then you're undercut underneath. And that's, I think, what nonlinear is trying to get around is like, in a linear form, you'll make assumptions about the story beats and where you're going. And if I can make it nonlinear, you won't know where I'm going with it. It's not that I don't trust you. It's just that I trust you too much. You're too competent to anticipate how this might unfold. And I want it to be a surprise no matter what. So that's how I think nonlinear is approached anyway. But to each their own.
Yeah, I don't know. I think like in the at-home streaming era,
yep,
I get when you're like, I have to have a catch. I have to get people to be interested, or they'll just turn it off and switch to something else.
Yeah.
And so like, it's unfortunate, but I understand why people do that today. I still don't like it, but like a movie made in 1994 that's put in the theaters. It's like, I came here to watch Pulp Fiction. I don't need you to fucking like sell me on it, And like, I feel like a movie that is meant to be in a theater, I don't understand really why they do that type of stuff, because I'm like, if you want to sell me on some stupid shit, make the trailer non-representative of the film, whatever, like do some weird shit that doesn't matter to get me to come and sit there. But like, I'm sitting here, show me the movie, tell me the story that you want to tell me. And like, I understand now, okay, the movie came out in 2024. It got a theatrical run. Maybe they weren't expecting that it would. And didn't get a long one, but it did get one. And then it'll be streaming, and then it's competing with all the other garbage online and the millions of options. And it's like, if it can grab you with a, story in 6 chapters, chapter 4, and you're like, oh shit, like it's starting in the middle. Like I can see why that could make people want to see it through to the end. When they encounter that at the start, even if it's not my preferred method of storytelling or what I would think is the most coherent, reasonable form of storytelling. I don't know. I feel like because of the modern streaming era, just people have to do what they have to do to get viewers to just stick with it. And it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. So I can't put too much blame on people for doing that. I can say that like, I personally don't like it, and I don't think it's a good way to tell a story, but like, I get why people do weird shit like that.
It's one of those things where it's going to come down to personal preference of like how you like a story structured and what it could be. But I think that there's beauty in both. In a linear and a nonlinear, they both can trust you in a different way to keep things and keep tabs on things. And like, even in a reverse linear order, Christopher Nolan, I suppose you might trust somebody, but fucking whatever you're trying to do with Tenet is just its own thing.
How interesting would Memento be if it was just played in order?
There actually is a cut of that. If you get the DVD, you can watch the linear order.
It might actually be better.
It's
if
interesting.
It was played in order.
Is it?
It is interesting. It's definitely a different.
I was like watching somebody else watch it in nonlinear order because they forget every moment. how it's
Yeah,
but like that makes it a really tragic story about a man who keeps fucking up and forgetting shit. And like, I feel like that would be much more moving and engaging than like watching Memento as it's cut, by Nolan. Like you feel like he's just fucking with you and playing a trick on you. Like it's not like an enjoyable cinematic experience.
Well, you look at it from two different perspectives in that sense. When you watch it linearly, you can experience the tragedy of the actual character. But when you watch it non-linearly and you're tricked by Nolan, you empathize further with the character, because at one point in time, you're like, whoever this John G person is, fuck, that's me. You don't believe his lies. And
you heard it, people. Strange Darling sucks. Don't listen to John G. He's full of shit.
But like, I think that it speaks to the two parts, this multidimensionality of being human and how you experience a story. And it's one of those things that like, that's the reason why we can watch movies in different edits. We can watch them in different orders. That's why Ridley Scott has like fucking 5 different versions of Blade Runner or whatever the fuck, because you can experience a story so many different ways, and you might like it one way, but you definitely can experience it another way and be like, that wasn't good, or any of those, and that's what you take away. And so I feel like nonlinear offers a chance for you to, no matter what, be disoriented and confused. And as you try to piece it together, you're using more of your brain power to keep context of things. It's not so much the director doesn't trust you to do that, but that they want to play with your context and not that they want to play with your actual character involvement and emotion. And that's not to say that like it doesn't try to do both or any of that, but
yeah,
it's a fascinating way to play with film and something else that like in storytelling you can do. So
yeah. Memento is interesting watching it linearly, because I think you're right. You get a very different perspective in how you piece it together, because I think you trust the main character when you watch it backwards.
Right.
Yeah.
And then learn to distrust him. When you watch it linearly, it's interesting how the other people that you don't necessarily recognize it when you're going backwards are kind of using him as well.
Yeah.
So like you see it backwards and you see it, but it's really funny almost watching it linearly when Carrie-Anne Moss like walks out, like spits in his drink and then hands it to him, or like walks out and walks right back in and acts like nothing happened and shit like that. That it's just much more like she's fucking with him, that you only kind of piece together going backwards, but from the start you see immediately how they're using him. So yeah, it's different both ways. I think that we forgot Kill Bill is totally nonlinear, kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
You're talking about the single 4-hour movie that is Kill Bill.
All one.
That's
Kill
right.
Bill. Yes.
There's only one. That means Tarantino has 2 more films to go.
No, one more film to go.
That's what it is.
And he's just not making The Critic because he doesn't like it enough to make it his last film.
Is that the one with the Ian McKellen or whoever the fuck was supposed to be in The Critic, or is that somebody else?
I don't remember hearing him connected with it. It's possible.
It.
But I know he started making that movie and decided to stop making it because he's like, well, I can only make 10 movies and this can't be my last one because it's not good enough. So I need to start over.
He also said it just ended up coming out more connected to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Sorry, there's another movie called The Critic that came out in 2023 that was a thriller drama with Ian McKellen.
Oh,
yeah.
Different movie.
Whoops.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I believe Tarantino's The Critic was supposed to be about Pauline Kael, which I was pretty interested in seeing, and then he didn't make it. So
yeah. Who's the one critic that you were like, I don't care about, that Tarantino or not Scorsese did a documentary about? And
oh no, she's not a film critic.
She's not a critic. She's a feminist.
She's like a New York personality.
There you go. Yeah. Anne Leibovitz. Leibovitz.
Oh, Anne Leibovitz. Yeah.
Is that her
Fran Leibovitz?
Fran
Leibovitz, everybody.
No, it's like, no, I think she's an interesting person, but like the movie Scorsese made about her is just them sitting down and talking for 85 minutes.
My Dinner with Andre. And
yeah,
Fran
I'm like,
Leibovitz.
they're both interesting, accomplished people, but like I didn't find this to be a very fascinating film, especially for something from Scorsese. She's like 2 people sitting at a table. I'm like,
yeah,
okay.
Sure, why not?
It's different for something he would do, but.
Well, anyways,
let's
Strange Darling, quite an interesting conversation that led into a much more philosophical and preferential discussion But Dixon, I'm sorry that
Taking
you
us
did
down
not
a path.
enjoy it, but I'm glad that you also appreciated how wonderfully technically composed it was.
I really enjoyed the filmmaking aspects of it.
That's good. I'm glad.
Really
Sorry about the
hated
rest.
the story. But yeah, I mean, I like going to see new indie films and trying to appreciate what's out there. And, I'm glad I went to see that rather than Beetlejuice or Borderlands or whatever fuck is out there, didn't care for it, but I probably had more fun with it than I would have with an alternative screening. So
It led to a much more satisfying conversation than Beetlejuice or
for sure.
Borderlands would. So.
But did it have a limited edition popcorn bucket?
No, you're right. There wasn't any open mouth gaping maw.
Yeah, I don't know. There was nothing that I could fuck that I purchased at the theater that day, so it's disappointing. Yeah.
All right. Well, we wrap it up. That is a recommend for Riddle of Fire.
Yep.
A recommend for Take Care of Maya, and a refute and a recommend for Strange Darling. We managed to get on to sit on the fence.
We'll honor the
after all.
refute. We'll honor.
I am
Dixon's
refuting
refute.
it. John is recommending it, but it's the thing that I'm bringing to the group,
and therefore
I'm
Dixon
it.
wants to have the louder voice.
He trumps. Yeah, he wins.
So yes, there you go.
All right, there you have it. I've been your host, Ryan King. With me, as always,
John Garcia. Go see Strange Darling, everybody. Don't listen to Dixon's lies. It's a good movie.
Well-made movie.
Yes. I'm willing to endorse this.
I don't know that it is well constructed or that the story is interesting, but
that's what I said about Gladiator. So let's just call it even.
That's very true. That's very true. We both have more extreme opinions on Strange Darling than we had on Gladiator.
It's true. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Different sides of the fence.
Yeah.
Dixon can't stop talking about it. Just keep going.
I'm just gonna keep ranting until the fucking John cuts me off.
Hey there, movie buffs, TV toughs, and all listeners in between. John here from the Afterthoughts podcast. I just wanted to drop in at the end of this episode and say thanks for listening. If you've got afterthoughts of your own to share, hit us up. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at The Afterpod, or jump into a conversation on our Discord server. You can find info for this and more at theafterpod.transistor.fm. Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.